Hello, horror lovers. Welcome to the chilling world of Mr. Haunt. Please subscribe. It's our biggest motivation to keep bringing you spine-tingling stories. Let us know in the comments which city you're listening from. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Now, let's get into the stories. One night something happened, which I cannot forget. It was during the fall of 2019, and I had just moved into a rented cabin near Mill Creek, tucked deep into the remote parts of western Michigan. The area had an old, almost forgotten feel too. It's dense woods, dirt roads, and no cell phone service once you passed the last gas station. I thought it would be perfect for focusing on my thesis about regional folklore and unsolved disappearances in rural America. But what happened that October changed everything I believed about folklore, because I saw it, I heard it, and I survived. I chose the cabin for its isolation. No distractions, no neighbors, and most importantly, cheap rent. The old man who showed it to me, Mr. Sloan, gave me a funny look when I signed the lease. "You hear anything strange?" he said. "Just don't go looking for it." I thought he was just another local trying to spook the city boy. I laughed it off. I shouldn't have. The first few nights were quiet. Too quiet, actually. No owls, no crickets, not even the wind through the trees. It was like the forest held its breath after dark. About a week in, I started noticing deep scratches on the trees around the back of the cabin. Not vertical, like a bear's. These were cross-hatched, violent, as though something had clawed through. Bark just for the sake of destruction. Some were 6 or 7 feet up. Then came the footprints. Huge, nearly the size of my forearm. Canine, but wrong somehow. Elongated, more upright. I took photos, thinking maybe I'd stumbled across wolf sign or some strange hybrid animal. That night, the howling started. It began just after 2 a.m., a long, rising howl, deeper than any coyote or wolf I'd ever heard, and way too close to the cabin. I froze in my bed. My window was open just a crack, and through it, I could hear something moving just outside, heavy footsteps in the dry leaves, a low panting breath, the scrape of claws against the wooden porch. Then came the scratching dot, slow, deliberate dragging. Sounds on the wall just behind my bed. I stayed absolutely still until dawn. In the morning, I found deep gouges in the cabin wall. The screen door had been bent at the hinges. My trash bin, which I always kept inside, was somehow dragged 50 feet into the woods and torn open like tissue paper. I called Mr. Sloan. He didn't seem surprised. "Yup," he said. "It's come early this year." "What do you mean it?" He didn't answer. Just told me to stay indoors after dark and keep a shotgun nearby. But I didn't own a shotgun, so I drove to the nearest town, nearly 40 minutes away, to buy one. The clerk at the hardware store asked where I was staying. When I told him, his face went pale. "By Mill Creek." "You mean near the burnt down logging site?" "Yeah," I said. He looked around, lowered his voice. "There's things in them woods that ain't ever been classified. Whatever's out there, it ain't natural." I wanted to believe he was just playing along with local ghost stories, but his eyes told a different story. That night, I loaded the shotgun, locked every window and door, and lit the fireplace. By 1:45 a.m., I was sweating. Not from the fire, just from the feeling, like something was out there watching, waiting. At exactly 2:03 a.m., it started again. The howl, this time closer, right outside. The cabin shook with the force of it. Then came the thud against the door. I stood with the shotgun aimed, heart hammering in my chest, trying to breathe quietly. The door creaked, then something spoke. Not words, but a low, growling mimicry of my own voice. Mockingly, "Eat me in." It sounded like a sick parody, like a wolf trying to be human. I held my breath. It laughed. Then the power cut out. I lit a candle and sat there for hours, listening as the thing circled the cabin. I never saw it, just caught glimpses. A hunched shadow, claws tapping the window, yellow eyes that reflected light like mirrors. Eventually, the sound stopped. The power came back. The sun rose. I found tracks in the dirt, twice as many as the night before. Whatever it was, it had not been alone. I packed my bags and left that same morning. 3 weeks later, I got an email from another grad student who took my spot. They lasted 2 nights. They sent a photo. It showed deep claw marks on the cabin ceiling. Ceiling, not the walls, not the floor. Ceiling meaning whatever it was, it could climb. I still hear the howl sometimes, on windless nights, even from my apartment in the city. I keep the shotgun under my bed now, just in case. I was 27 when it happened to me, and at the time, I thought I had seen just about every type of predator the forests had to offer. I worked as a wilderness guide for out-of-state hunters in the Sierra National Forest, mostly the sugar pine, ridge, region, remote, rugged terrain where GPS doesn't help and locals rely more on instinct than electronics. I'd guided elk hunters, helped search for lost hikers, and even had a stare down with a mountain lion once. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what we encountered that week. It wasn't just a strange animal. It was something that watched us from the shadows, and when it wanted us to know it was there, it let us know in the worst way. It let us know in the worst way. It started when my client, a guy named Doug Rains from Nebraska, booked me for a 5-day bow hunting trip. He was a quiet guy, mid-50s, former military, serious and professional. He brought his teenage son Lucas, who was way too green for this kind of terrain, but eager. We packed light and hiked into a basin area about 10 miles in. I had a favorite spot near a seasonal creek bed that rarely saw other people. It was silent, beautiful, untouched, or so I thought. That first night, we set up camp just before dusk. I left a trail cam tied to a nearby tree, facing the animal path we'd seen sign on. We made dinner, swapped stories, and turned in early, around 1 a.m. I woke to the sound of heavy breathing outside my tent. Not a snort, like a deer, not sniffing, like a bear, just slow, deep, wet breathing, like something massive standing just outside the nylon, inches from my head. I reached for my flashlight and shined it through the tent wall. That's when I saw it, a silhouette, broad shoulders, pointed ears, and a canine-like snout, standing on 2 legs. I froze, then it moved, quickly, silently, back into the woods. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I checked the trail cam. My hands were trembling so badly, I almost dropped the SD card. Doug noticed. "You all right?" I nodded, lied, told him it was probably a bear. I didn't want to spook his son. I pulled the images onto my satellite tablet. There were 4 shots. The first 3 were normal. Deer, a raccoon, nothing strange. The last one, that one, stopped my heart. The photo showed a massive figure, almost dead center. Its eyes glowed with the reflection of the flash, but its shape, it looked like a dog. No, a man. No, something in between, covered in dark, matted fur, long claws, erect posture, and it was facing the camera, smiling. I shut the tablet and didn't say a word. Just packed up the trail cam and told Doug we'd move camp uphill. I made up something about shifting wind patterns. Truth was, I didn't want to be in that basin another night. We hiked up to a ridge near some old logging roads. The second night, we built the fire bigger. I kept the shotgun closer, and I made sure I took first watch. Just before midnight, I saw it again, standing just inside the tree line, watching us. When I aimed my flashlight at it, it didn't flinch, didn't blink, just slowly stepped backward until it was swallowed by the dark. That's when I realized something terrifying. It was testing us, studying us. Doug must have seen the change in my face. "You've seen this before," he said. I nodded. He said nothing more. Around 3 a.m., something screamed. It wasn't human, but it wasn't any animal I'd heard either. A guttural shrieking wail that echoed across the whole ridge. Lucas shot up, terrified, and Doug grabbed his bow like it would help. I raised my shotgun and circled the camp perimeter. We didn't see it again that night, but we found the deer. Carcass in the morning, split open, not eaten, just destroyed. Its ribcage had been crushed inward, like it had been stomped, and its head was missing. I told Doug we were leaving. He didn't argue. As we packed up, we found tracks around the tent site. Huge paw, like prints, with elongated toes, upright gait, as if it had been walking circles around us all night. We hiked out hard and fast. No breaks, no talking. I only looked back once, just before we reached the road. I heard branches snap to my left, and there it was, crouched low, maybe 20 yards off the trail, watching, almost curious, like it was disappointed we were leaving. We never spoke of it after that. Doug canceled the next year's trip. Lucas sent me an email once, said he'd been having nightmares, said he sees it sometimes, standing at the edge of his backyard. I burned that trail cam card, but I still have the image. And sometimes, late at night, I look at it, not to remind myself of what I saw, but to make sure it's not getting closer. One night something happened which I cannot forget, and no matter how much I've tried to make sense of it, the memory still rattles around in my chest like a trapped animal. I was 19 then, working at an old paper mill on the outskirts of a dying Alabama town, not far from a stretch of woods locals called the Cotton Mill Patch. It was supposed to be just a shortcut to get home, a path I'd used for months, but something lived in there, something that didn't want me walking through its woods. I was doing the night shift at the mill, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. It was brutal work, noisy and hot, with steam blasting from old machines that looked like they belonged in a museum. Most of the older guys drove home, but I didn't have a car yet, so I walked. The road was long and curved like a question mark, and there were no street lights for the last 3 miles. I discovered the shortcut through the woods by accident one night when my flashlight died. I followed an overgrown deer path that led straight through the cotton mill woods, cutting almost an hour off my walk. At first, it felt like I'd won the lottery, until the 3rd or 4th time I used it. That's when I started noticing things. The first was the quiet, the unnatural kind. No crickets, no frogs, not even the rustle of trees, just stillness. Then came the smell. It was like copper and wet fur, sharp enough to sting the back of my throat. I figured something had died nearby, but I never saw a body. Then one night, walking home, I heard footsteps behind me. I stopped. They stopped. I moved forward again. They started again. Only these weren't human footsteps. They were heavier, thudding into the ground like something big and fast. I turned around, shining my flashlight behind me. Nothing but the woods felt alive, like something was hiding just beyond the beam. I told my coworker, Troy, about it the next night. He just looked at me with this grim sort of stare and said, "You ever hear of the Dogman?" I laughed, thinking he was messing with me. "I'm serious," he said. "Used to be stories all through the South. Half wolf, half man thing. Stalks people dumb enough to wander too deep." He paused. "Especially the ones that walk alone." I chalked it up to an old-timer trying to scare me, but the fear crept in anyway. A week later, I took the shortcut again. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I was being paranoid, or maybe I just didn't want to admit something was off. It was colder than usual. The air had that heavy, pre-storm feeling. And then, I saw it, just ahead. About 30 feet from the trail, crouched low behind a cluster of young pines. At first, I thought it was a bear, but bears don't watch you like that, and they don't. Stand up this thing did. 7 feet tall at least. Muscular, covered in dark, tangled fur. Its legs bent like a dog's, backwards at the knee. Its arms hung long, clawed at the ends. And its face was a twisted mix of man and wolf. Snout, light but expressive, intelligent. Its lips peeled back, revealing a grin full of jagged yellow teeth. It didn't move. It didn't need to. Just seeing it there broke something in me. I backed away slowly. No sudden moves. The thing tilted, its head dot. Then it dropped back down on all fours and ran, but not toward me. It circled. I heard it crashing through the brush, always just outside my vision. It was playing with me. I broke into a sprint, crashed through the rest of the trail, and didn't stop until I hit pavement, lungs burning and legs shaking. After that night, I refused to take the shortcut. I started saving up for a bike. Troy noticed I was shaken. I finally told him everything. He didn't laugh this time. Thought so, he said. What do you mean? There have been stories, even before the cotton mill closed. Folks hearing howling at dusk, finding deer torn in half, seeing red eyes in the woods. He leaned in. You got lucky. Most folks don't see it twice. 3 weeks later, a guy from the third shift went missing. Search parties scoured the woods. They found pieces of his reflective vest near the trailhead, torn blood on the trees, no body. His car was still parked at the mill. Police blamed a cougar, but Troy and I knew better. We stopped talking about it. Some things don't like being spoken of. Now I drive to work, even if it means skipping meals to pay for gas. And every time I pass the edge of those woods, I feel that thing watching me, waiting. I haven't used that shortcut since, but sometimes I still hear something pacing behind me at night, even when I'm nowhere near the trees, like it remembers me, and it's just waiting for me to forget. I was 27 when it happened to me, back when I used to drive long haul for a freight company that ran from Oklahoma down through the back roads of Arkansas and into Louisiana. It was a lonely job, one I picked up after my divorce, figuring the isolation might be better than the silence at home. Turns out, some silences are worse than others. Some are full of eyes. The strangest stretch of road I ever drove was a quiet portion of Highway 71, just past Mena, Arkansas. There's this dip in the land where the trees get denser and the radio cuts out, always in the same spot. The CB dies, no signal. You'd swear it was a dead zone or some weird magnet pocket, but every driver I talked to avoided it at night, of course. I didn't listen, not until I saw it myself. I'd gotten a late start that day, and by the time I hit 71, it was past 1 a.m. The sky was dark and moonless, and fog was rolling in, thick and heavy like it was crawling on purpose. As I entered that dead stretch, the dashboard lights flickered. Then the headlights dimmed. I slowed the rig to a crawl, hand on the wheel, suddenly hyper, aware of the way the darkness outside seemed thicker than it should have been. That's when I saw something on the shoulder ahead. At first I thought it was a big dog, maybe a stray. It stood at the edge of my low beams, its back to me. It didn't move when I got closer. Didn't even flinch at the sound of the diesel engine rumbling just feet away. Then it turned and stood, its legs bent backward, like a digitigrade animal. Dog-like, but wrong in proportion. Long arms with hands, not paws. huge claws like garden shears. Its body was covered in dark gray fur, matted with something that looked like mud or dried blood. But it was the face that made me nearly stall the truck. It had the elongated muzzle of a wolf, but its eyes, those eyes were human, and they were fixed directly on me. No panic, no confusion, just knowing. I slammed the accelerator and swerved around it, praying the truck wouldn't stall. As I passed, I heard a sound that haunts me to this day. It wasn't a howl. It was a scream, high-pitched, ragged, like a woman being pulled into a wood chipper. And it didn't come from behind me. It came from above. I didn't stop until I reached a gas station outside Shreveport. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't put the truck in park. The attendant saw me pale as a ghost and offered me a cigarette. I didn't even smoke, but I took it anyway. "You came through the trees, didn't you?" he said after a minute. I looked at him. He just nodded. "They say there's an old spirit out there. Wasn't always like that. Something woke it up." He didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. But I never drove that road again. Months passed. The incident faded, until I started hearing similar reports from other drivers. Same area, same time, same thing. But some weren't lucky like me. One guy disappeared completely. His rig was found, still idling, door open, cab empty. Another was found weeks later, in a ditch miles from his route, clothes shredded, bite marks on the bone. Still, the company kept running routes through there, and the thing kept watching. You may not believe me, and that's fine, but if you ever find yourself on Highway 71 around 1 a.m., and your radio goes quiet, and your lights flicker, don't stop, don't slow down, and whatever you do, don't look into the trees, because something might be looking back, and once it sees you, it never forgets your scent. One night something happened which I cannot forget. Not because it was particularly bloody or dramatic, but because it waited, watched, and then came home with us. It was October, cool and crisp, the kind of night that makes campfires crackle louder and stories feel a little more real. My cousin Jared and I had driven out to an old gravel pit outside of Lapeer, Michigan, a spot he claimed had some of the best mudding trails in the state. The land used to be owned by some mining company, but it had been abandoned for years. Just acres of churned up ground, old quarry pits, rusted machinery, and trees growing in odd, unnatural rows. Local kids went there to drink and hook up, but it was also known for something else. Strange sounds, unnatural cries, a giant dog, like creatures someone swore they saw digging around the edges of the pit under a red moon. Of course, we were idiots, and thought it would be fun to go camp out there. We rolled in around 5 p.m. with a cooler, a tent, and our grand idea of cooking burgers on a flat rock by the fire. By the time the sun dipped below the tree line, Jared was already on his third beer, and I was roasting marshmallows. Trying not to think about how far we were from the nearest paved road, around 9 p.m., I heard something in the distance. At first, it was subtle, twigs snapping, slow crunching, like someone walking carefully through the brush. "Probably deer," Jared muttered, but then it circled. You know that sound you get when something moves just outside your line of sight, the way your ears track it unconsciously? That was happening. It would start behind us, drift toward the side, then fade, only to pick back up behind us again. I finally stood up, flashlight in hand, and pointed it toward the nearest clump of trees. Nothing, just fog beginning to settle, and our breath clouding in the air. Then Jared screamed. I whipped around, just in time to see him backing away from the edge of the pit, flashlight trembling in his hand. "There's something in there," he hissed. Was crawling up. I rushed over and aimed my light down into the quarry. At first I saw nothing but dirt and brush. Then, Movement. A long, lanky shadow dragging itself up the embankment on all fours. Limbs too long, spine arched like it was broken. Its back legs looked almost canine, muscular, but bent wrong, and its shoulders shifted like a person crouching on all fours. Then it looked up. Its face was wolfish, but distorted, like a dog with a stretched-out skull and deep-set eyes that shone a sickly amber in our flashlight beams. And it grinned at us. We didn't even pack up. We jumped in Jared's truck and floored it down the muddy road, fishtailing as we went. I swear we heard it chasing us for at least the first mile, low, rhythmic panting, claws digging into the earth. But when we finally hit asphalt, the sound stopped. We didn't speak the whole way back. We got to my house around midnight. Jared stayed the night because we were still too shaken to drive separately. We locked the doors, pulled the curtains, and sat in silence, watching reruns on mute, just to fill the air with something. Around 3 a.m., we heard a thump on the roof. We both jumped. Then it walked, slow, deliberate footsteps pacing across the shingles. Then, another sound, sniffing, heavy, wet, exaggerated sniffing, like a dog rooting around a carcass. Except it was coming from the vents. That thing had followed us, and it was on the roof. I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember the silence suddenly returning around dawn. When we stepped outside, we found deep scratches across the back door. Not just random marks, claw marks. 4 of them, each about a foot long, and gouged into the wood, like someone had tried to peel the door open. We reported it to the sheriff. He chalked it up to a bear maybe, and advised us not to leave food out. But we knew better. Jared moved to Ohio the following week. I started carrying a firearm. Not for people, but for it. I still live near the pit. Sometimes, when the moon is low and the wind's just right, I hear the same slow, deliberate footsteps outside my window. It doesn't scratch the doors anymore. It just waits, and I'm beginning to think it's not looking for a place to hunt. It's looking for a place to stay. I was 24 when it happened to me, and I remember it clearly because it was the night I almost killed something I do not believe was meant to be seen by people. Something too smart, too quiet, and too wrong to be called just a creature. I was coming back from a weekend visiting my dad in southern Kentucky, driving northbound on Route 127 through a particularly quiet stretch near the Ohio border. It was well after 11 p.m., and I had been on the road for nearly 5 hours. The highway there cuts through farmland, woods, and long patches of nothing. Not a gas station or house for miles. I was doing about 65, windows down slightly, letting the breeze keep me awake, when something darted out of the ditch ahead of me. I had maybe 2 seconds to react. A blur of fur, flash of yellow eyes, something on all fours, then thud. I slammed the brakes, and the car fishtailed slightly before stopping halfway. On the shoulder, my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I sat there, staring into the darkness behind me, unsure if I'd just hit a deer, a dog, or, God forbid, some rare coyote. Grabbing my flashlight from the glove box, I stepped out into the night air, which now felt unusually still, like all the sound had been sucked out of the world. I walked about 20 feet back. That's when I found blood, but no body. The blood was thick, dark, and still warm, smeared in wide streaks across the pavement. Whatever I hit had gotten up. That didn't sit right with me, at that speed. Anything I hit should have stayed down. I followed the trail off the road, into the ditch, then up a grassy hill that sloped toward a thin line of trees. That's when I saw it, just past the first tree line, standing upright on 2 legs. Was the thing I hit. It towered over me, at least 7 feet tall. Its frame was covered in matted, dark fur. Its arms hung low, longer than they should have been, ending in clawed hands. Its face was wrong, elongated like a wolf's snout, but too expressive, like a man snarling in rage. And its eyes were locked on me. We stared at each other for what felt like forever. It was breathing heavily, wheezing like it had cracked a rib, but its posture said something else. Anger, not pain, not fear. I didn't even realize I had backed up until I tripped over a rock and fell onto the grass. That's when it charged. It didn't run like a bear or a man. It bounded forward on two legs, hunched low, gaining speed with terrifying grace. I screamed and ran. I barely made it to the car. Fumbling the keys, yanking the door open, locking it behind me. For a moment, I thought it had stopped, but then it hit the side of my car. A single massive clawed hand slammed into the passenger side window, shattering it instantly. I hit the gas and drove like a madman in my mirror. I saw it watching me, just standing there in the road, chest heaving, claws twitching. When I reached the next town over, I pulled into a gas station lot and broke down. A trucker came out to help and saw the side of my car. "Dear?" he asked. I shook my head. Whatever that was, it wasn't something I could explain. Not then, not now. Since that night, I've had a recurring dream. I'm driving alone, same road, same darkness, and in the ditch ahead, those eyes blink open. I've avoided Route 127 ever since, but sometimes, on quiet nights, I see roadkill on the side of the road, near where it happened. Picked clean, but no buzzards, no coyotes, just deep claw marks in the dirt, like something came back to finish what I interrupted. When I was 12, something happened that I still don't talk about to most people, mainly because it sounds like something out of a horror movie. But I remember every detail, every second, like it's carved into the inside of my skull. It happened at my cousin Joel's place in rural Iowa during a late summer weekend. My parents had left me there while they went to a wedding out of state. Joel lived in this old farmhouse surrounded on 3 sides by cornfields and on the 4th by a patch of dense woods. It was the kind of quiet out there where you could hear insects breathing. That night, we had just finished playing flashlight tag with his 2 older brothers. We were all sweaty and dirty and ready for bed. I remember his mom shouting from the back porch that it was past midnight and we needed to get in and hose off. That's when we heard the dog, only it wasn't barking like a normal dog. It let out this low, rattling growl that vibrated through the corn stalks. It sounded like it came from something big, too big. Joel thought it was a coyote. His brother Wyatt thought it was a neighbor's German shepherd, but none of us moved. Then it growled again, closer this time, and higher up, like it wasn't down on all fours. We turned our flashlights toward the edge of the cornfield. That's when I saw the eyes. 2 round, amber-colored eyes, set far apart, about 7 feet off the ground, peeking out just above the corn. Whatever it was standing in the field, between the rows, watching us. We were frozen. I felt something in my chest I hadn't felt before. Raw, instinctual panic. "Is that a scarecrow?" Joel asked, barely whispering. It blinked, and then it moved. It didn't walk away. It ducked, like it was trying not to be seen. We ran inside and locked every door. Joel's mom yelled at us for slamming the screen door so hard, but when we told her what we saw, her face changed. She didn't laugh. She didn't even argue. She walked to the kitchen, pulled the curtain aside, and stared out into the night for a long time. She didn't say a word, but she stayed up until dawn, sitting in the living room, shotgun resting across her lap. The next morning, we went outside with Joel's dad to see if it was a prank. In the field, just 30 feet from the porch, We found claw marks on the wooden fence post, long and deep, too wide for a raccoon, too low for a bear, and beside them, something worse, footprints. They weren't paw prints, but they weren't human either. They had the heel of a man but the toes of a beast, long, almost like claws pressed into the dirt. 5 of them, and they led straight into the cornfield, then vanished. That was the last summer I visited Joel's place. Years later, when I asked him about that night, he told me his mom still doesn't talk about it. But once, during a storm, she saw the same glowing eyes staring through the kitchen window. On the 2nd floor, she sold the house 2 months later. Whatever it was, it didn't want to hurt us. It just wanted us to know it was there, and sometimes, that's worse. One night something happened, which I cannot forget, no matter how many years pass or how much I try to bury it. I was 24, working construction down in Kentucky, pulling long shifts on rural job sites far from town. That particular week, I had taken a job near Daniel Boone National Forest, out by roads that were barely paved, where GPS cut out, and you'd be lucky to see another vehicle all day. It was a Thursday, late September, and I had stayed longer than usual to finish a foundation pour. By the time I cleaned up and packed my gear, it was after 10 p.m., and the site had gone black. No lights, no generators. Just moonlight and the sound of insects humming through the trees. I hopped into my old Silverado and started heading back, down the gravel road, radio off, windows down, just trying to unwind. That's when I first felt it. I was being watched now. Now, that's not something I say lightly. I'm not jumpy. I've worked alone in the woods, on rooftops, in burned-out houses, you name it. But this was different. My skin went cold, like every hair on my arms decided to stand up and scream at once. At first I chalked it up to nerves, or too much caffeine. But as I turned down a deeper stretch of road surrounded by pine and oak, something ran across the road in front of me. I slammed the brakes. It moved like a shadow, but faster. A blur of black fur and legs that bent the wrong way. It cleared the road in 2 strides, landed in the ditch, and vanished into the trees. I just sat there, engine running, trying to breathe. That thing was tall, too tall. And it didn't move like a deer or a coyote. It moved like it had a purpose. I started driving again, a little faster now, maybe 100 yards ahead. I saw movement to my left. It was running parallel to me in the trees. That's when it stepped out again, not running this time, walking toward me. On 2 legs, I floored it. Gravel shot out from under my tires as I peeled away. I could hear its feet pounding the dirt beside me. It was keeping up. I don't know how, but this thing was fast. It looked like a giant dog standing upright, hunched slightly forward, with long arms and claws that swung like pendulums. Its mouth was open, tongue lolling, and I swear on everything I love, it was smiling. Its eyes were reflecting red from my brake lights, and they never left mine. I hit 45. Then 60, then 70. Still there, running beside the truck like it wasn't even trying hard. Then, as quickly as it came, it vanished, leaped back into the woods, like it lost interest or was satisfied, scaring me half to death. I didn't stop until I hit the highway. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. The weirdest part came later. The next morning, I found deep scratch marks all down the side of the truck bed. Not like a keying. These were gouges, like someone had dragged 3 knives through the metal while I was speeding at 70 mph, and they were high up, near the window. No animal I know could have reached that. A few weeks later, an old guy at a gas station saw the damage and asked me if I had been driving near the woods after dark. When I said yes, he nodded like he already knew. They come out sometimes. when the wind's just right," he said. "Not to hunt, just to remind you they're real." He wouldn't say who they were, but I'm pretty damn sure I know. There's something out there. Some kind of beast that walks like a man, smells like wet fur and copper, and runs faster than any creature should. If you ever find yourself alone on a rural road after midnight and you get that feeling that you're not alone, don't ignore it. Roll up your windows, hit the gas, and don't look into the trees. I was 35 when it happened to me, and I still sleep with a loaded shotgun under the bed because of it. I live in southern Missouri, on 5 acres of forest, backed land that my dad left me when he passed. Quiet place, no neighbors in sight, just the way I like it. I never believed in cryptids or monsters. I figured those stories were just people trying to explain things they didn't understand, or flat out lies. But now, I'll never doubt again. It started one night around 2:30 in the morning. I'd fallen asleep watching old VHS tapes in the den, and woke up to the sound of my dog growling low. The kind of growl that comes from deep in the chest, like he's warning something to back off. Ranger, my shepherd mix, never growled unless something was really wrong. I muted the TV, sat up, and listened. That's when I heard footsteps in the leaves outside the back door. Slow, heavy, deliberate. At first I thought it might have been a black bear. We get them now and then, sniffing around for trash. So I grabbed my flashlight, cocked my shotgun, and crept to the kitchen window. But what I saw out there, it wasn't a bear. The creature was standing on 2 legs, just beyond the tree line, watching the house. It was tall, had to be 7, maybe 8 feet, and it had long, narrow arms that almost reached its knees. The head was all wrong too, canine, but misshapen, with ears that stuck out sideways, and a snout too long to be anything natural. And those eyes, they glowed, even in the flashlight beam, like headlights in fog, reflective, intelligent, hateful. Ranger started barking at the door, his fur standing up like a ridge, but he didn't lunge or charge. He stayed by me, like even he knew going outside wasn't an option. I should have turned off the light, locked everything, and stayed put, but I was raised not to be scared of anything on my land, so I opened the back door. It didn't move, just stood there, staring. "Get out of here," I shouted, raising the shotgun. "I'll shoot." Still, no movement, like it wasn't afraid of me, or the noise, or the weapon. Then it tilted its head to the side, like a dog trying to understand what you're saying, except there was something almost mocking in it. Then it grinned. I swear on my mother's grave. It smiled at me. That's when I pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the trees, and the blast lit up the yard. But by the time the smoke cleared, the thing was gone. Not gone as in lying on the ground, gone as in vanished. But I didn't imagine it. The footprints, deep, clawed prints, were still in the dirt the next morning, circling the yard, pacing the porch. There were scratch marks on the doorframe, 2-3 deep grooves, like talons dragging slowly down the wood. That was just the first night. For the next 3 nights, the thing came back. Sometimes it stayed in the woods, other times it crept closer. I stopped sleeping. I kept the lights on. Ranger stopped going outside to pee. He'd just sit by the window, watching, whining low, like he was praying it wouldn't come back. I called the county sheriff, but they brushed it off. Said I probably scared off a bear, or maybe a vagrant. But one deputy came out, saw the prints, and went pale. He didn't say much, just told me to keep my doors locked, and to call if anything else happened. But the way he looked at those claw marks told me he'd seen something like it before. Eventually, after a week, it stopped coming. Or maybe it just lost interest in me. But I've never let my guard down since. I installed floodlights, motion sensors, cameras. I even moved my bedroom to the front of the house, away from the woods. But every so often, on clear nights, when the moon is full and the wind carries strange smells, Ranger will start growling again, low and slow, and I'll grab my gun and stare out at the trees, waiting for those glowing eyes to appear. I don't know what it wanted. I don't know why it chose my place. But I know this. There's something in those woods, something that walks like a man but isn't one. And it's smart, patient, and it's still out there. One night something happened, which I cannot forget. It was early October. The air in Tennessee gets sharp around that time, and I was driving home after visiting my sister outside of Knoxville. I took back roads like I always did, because I hated the glare of highways and preferred the company of trees. I was about 2 hours from home, cutting through Daniel Boone National Forest. The sun had just disappeared behind the hills, and that kind of purple, black dusk had settled in. The kind that looks soft but feels like it's hiding something. There was no cell reception, no gas stations, no traffic, just the hum of tires on cracked pavement and static on the radio. Then, out of nowhere, something sprinted across the road. It wasn't a deer, it wasn't a bear. It was tall, on 2 legs, gray fur, long limbs, a head like a German shepherd, but wider, bulkier, eyes that flashed like glass under a flashlight, but with intention, like it was looking into the car, at me. I swerved hard, tires screeching, and landed in a shallow ditch. My headlights swept over trees and empty air. The thing was gone. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my fingers ached, told myself it was stress, a shadow, a hallucination brought on by too much coffee and too little sleep. I wish it had been. My front tire was shredded. I had a spare but no signal, so I got out to change it, all while watching the woods, feeling the weight of something pressing from between the trees. There was no sound, not a single insect, not a rustle, not even wind. When the forest goes silent, it's because something predatory is nearby. That's what my dad always said when we hunted. I tightened the last lug nut and stood. Then I heard panting, slow, heavy, just beyond the tree line. I spun around, holding the tire iron like a club. There it was, 10 feet away, just watching me. Its head tilted slightly, like it was curious, or amused. Then it grinned, not in a way an animal does, but in a human way, like it understood something I didn't. I got in the car, locked the doors, and refused to blink. After 5 minutes, it walked away. I made it to a small motel an hour later, didn't sleep, just lay in bed replaying it over and over. In the morning, I told myself it was over. I drove home. I didn't tell anyone, but it followed me. 2 nights later, I heard claws on my roof, not on the shingles, on the metal of my trailer. Then, breathing through the vents. Low, guttural. Like a snarl being suppressed. I grabbed my shotgun and stepped outside. Nothing but the woods behind the trailer were full of broken branches. Something had been standing there. I set up trail cams the next day, caught nothing until the 7th night. 3:41 a.m. It walked right up to my back door, not crawling, not slinking, walking upright, shoulders almost brushing the frame, head cocked, staring through the window like it lived there. Then it looked at the camera and smiled again. I took the footage to the local sheriff. He watched, pale-faced, said he'd seen something like that once, years ago, but never up close. He told me not to go into the woods, didn't tell me to leave, didn't offer protection, just said, it chose you, like it was a fact. Since then, it's gotten bolder. I've found claw marks on my bedroom walls, Dead raccoons arranged in patterns. Outside my door, footprints in my kitchen, even though the doors were locked. Sometimes I wake up, and I can't move, and I hear breathing at the foot of the bed. One night, I opened my eyes, and it was sitting in the corner, just sitting, head tilted, watching as if waiting for something inside me to break. I'm writing this because I need someone to know. Even if it kills me, even if no one believes it, the Dogman is real. It isn't just a beast. It isn't just a legend. It's something else. And once it finds you, it doesn't go away. It doesn't get bored. It waits, it watches, and one day, it steps into your skin and never leaves. I was 16 when it happened to me. It was the summer I learned how real fear tastes. Dry in your mouth, bitter down your throat, and sharp like metal behind your teeth. I was spending the break with my cousin Joel out in Iron County, Michigan. He lived with his dad, my Uncle Frank, in a hunting cabin near the edge of Ottawa National Forest. The cabin was rough. No TV, no Wi-Fi, no cell signal. Just wood, water, and miles of trees thick enough to feel like they were watching you. Joel loved it, said it was peaceful. I didn't feel peace. I felt watched. The first couple days were uneventful. Fishing, hiking, building a fire, laughing at old VHS tapes of Joel's dad from the 80s. I slept like a rock the first few nights. But then came the night we heard something howl. We were sitting out back, eating from cans of beans and playing cards under a dim lantern when it hit, a deep, warbling howl that came from the southeast, way beyond the trees. Joel stiffened. "That's not a wolf," he said. "How do you know?" I asked. "Wolves don't sound angry." Uncle Frank came out a minute later, rifle in hand. "Get inside," he said. "What was that?" Joel asked. Frank didn't answer. He just stood there, watching the woods. After we went in, he double-bolted the door. Then he did something I'd never seen anyone do before. He scattered a circle of salt at every door and window. Joel saw me staring and whispered, "He only does that when it howls like that." That night I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard movement outside. It wasn't twigs snapping, it was footsteps. Deliberate, bipedal. I looked out the small window by the kitchen. The porch light was off, but there was moonlight, and I saw it. At first I thought it was a bear, but it was too tall, and then it turned. Eyes like wet coins. A snout too long for a man, too intelligent for a wolf. It was sniffing the air. Then it looked right at me. I backed away from the window and nearly knocked over the chair. Joel came into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. I dragged him to the window, but the thing was gone. I wanted to believe I imagined it. I almost did, until the next morning, when we found claw marks on the porch post. 5 of them, carved into the wood like butter, each one almost a foot long. Frank didn't say a word. He packed up, told us we were going fishing an hour away, and locked the cabin tight. That was the first time I saw fear in his eyes, but it didn't matter how far we drove. That night, it came again, and this time, it was closer. We heard it circling the cabin, the crunch of gravel, a low growl that rattled my ribs. Joel and I sat on the floor in the living room while Frank aimed the rifle at the front door. At exactly 3:11 a.m., something knocked. Not like an animal, not a scratch or bump. A knock, 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. Frank whispered, "Don't answer, don't speak." The door handle turned slowly, but it didn't open. Instead, we heard the thing laugh. Not loud, not human, but mockingly close. Then it said, in a hoarse, broken voice, "Joel." It said his name like it had chewed on it, like it had been practicing it. I thought Joel would pass out. We stayed awake until dawn. Nothing more happened, but in the morning, the door had deep gouges in it, and something left a deer skull on the steps. Its antlers were melted. That night was our last there. Frank packed us up, said he'd handle it, and sent us to stay at a friend's house 3 counties over. I begged him to come with us, but he said something that still haunts me. It's bound to this place. It's older than any of us. If I leave, it'll find new blood. We never saw Frank again. They found the cabin burned to the ground. A week later, no body, just ash, claw marks in the surviving concrete foundation, and a single word scrawled in charcoal across the chimney bricks. Joel. It's been over a decade. Joel doesn't talk about it. I don't either. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the woods, hiking or camping, I hear something off in the distance. Not quite a howl, not quite a growl, like something remembering me, like it knows my name. One evening I was dizzy, not from booze, not from stress, but from something else. A pressure in my skull, like altitude sickness. I was working a short-term gig as a fire watch out in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. Remote tower, no Wi-Fi, just a shortwave radio and miles of untouched forest as far as you could see. The dizziness hit right around sundown. I had just logged my daily report. No smoke, no movement, nothing but pines, and leaned against the rail to watch the trees dissolve into shadow. That's when I saw it. It wasn't close. Not yet. It was about 300 yards out. Crouched low, like it had just emerged from the underbrush. I thought it was a black bear at first, but it stood, slowly, and kept standing. 7 feet, maybe more. Shoulders hunched, chest narrow, with arms that hung down past its knees, and the head, wolf-like, but wrong. Broader at the crown, too expressive in the eyes. It didn't move. It just stared, like it was trying to decide what I was, or what I was worth. I blinked. It was gone. I scanned the tree line for 20 minutes, radioed the station. They said bears stand sometimes. No cause for alarm. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I climbed down at sunrise to check the perimeter trail, just to prove to myself it was nerves. Hallucination, maybe. Carbon monoxide, even. Half a mile in, I found prints. Huge, canine, but spaced like a man's gait. Deep impressions, claws like steak knives. The prints circled the base of the tower, then stopped, right at the ladder. That night, I barricaded the hatch. My tower was 40 feet tall, with steel supports, and no nearby trees for anything to jump from. I told myself I was safe. I had food, water, and a rifle with 1 round, just in case. Around 2 a.m., the dizziness came back, harder, like something was pressing its fingers into my temples. Then came the growl, low, so low it vibrated the bolts in the floor. I grabbed the rifle, unlocked the trapdoor, and aimed down the ladder. Nothing, just empty air, until I looked past the rungs and saw a hand wrapped around the bottom rail, clawed covered in coarse gray, black fur, and then a second hand, then its face. It didn't climb, it hung there, staring up at me, not trying to come up, just waiting. I don't know how long I stared back, rifle shaking, heart in my mouth. But eventually it dropped, silently, and walked off into the woods. I left at dawn, called in sick, drove home, refused to go back. 3 days later, the ranger station called. They'd found the tower destroyed, not burned, not broken down, bent or twisted like it had been in a car crash. Ladder snapped halfway down, hatch door shredded like paper. There were no tracks, just claw marks inside. The walls of the cab, and 1 word carved into the console, dizzy. I never went back, but sometimes I wake up dizzy, and when I do, I don't look out the window, because I know what's out there. waiting for the moment I forget how real it is. When I was young, I used to sneak out to the woods behind our property. I grew up in rural Arkansas, about 30 minutes from the nearest town, where the trees swallowed sound and the sky turned blacker than ink at night. I was 12 the first time I saw the thing. My parents were strict and religious. No TV, no games, no books that weren't about God. But I was a curious kid. Every night, after they went to bed, I'd sneak out with a flashlight and a bag of crackers to sit by the creek and just be. It felt like the only place that belonged to me, until it didn't anymore. It started with smells, rotten meat, wet fur, and something else, metallic, like rusted iron and blood. I'd be sitting by the creek and suddenly feel that sensation. I'm not alone. That thick, primal warning in the back of your neck. I started seeing strange things too. Deer carcasses split open from sternum to tail, guts left in perfect spirals. Trees clawed shoulder high with no signs of bears. I thought maybe it was coyotes or mountain lions, until the night I saw the eyes. Two amber lights about 30 yards across the water, low to the ground, like it was crouched. Watching, I froze. It didn't blink, didn't move, just stared. Then, slowly it rose, taller than any man, broad, lean, long limbs that seemed too fluid for something its size. The eyes never left mine. I turned and ran, didn't stop until I collapsed on the back porch, gasping. My flashlight was still out there. I never went back to get it. But that was just the beginning. The next few weeks were filled with noises, scraping at the windows, sniffing beneath the floorboards, growls that came from the woods, then from under the house. My parents blamed me, thought I was sneaking out again, making noise, lying about what I saw. So I stopped telling them. But one night, I woke up to the sound of breathing, not from inside the house, from inside my closet. I didn't move. Couldn't. The breathing was low, ragged, mucus, thick and wheezing like it had lungs full of water. Then it stopped, and something spoke. Not in words, but in meaning, like it poured a thought into my skull. Mine. The closet door didn't open, but I knew it had been there, and that it would come back. The next day, I ran away, took my dad's truck, and drove until it broke down near a fire station on the edge of county lines. The firemen found me crying under the dashboard. My parents were furious. But something changed after that, because my dad saw it too. He never told me what exactly he saw, only that he woke up one night and heard something breathing through the heater vent in the floor. He ripped the whole system out the next day, built a brick barrier under the house, and every night, he sat in the living room with his shotgun, facing the back wall. Eventually, the noises stopped. We moved 2 years later. I thought maybe I'd left it behind. I was wrong, because now, I'm grown. I live states away, and last night, my dog started growling at the closet. A smell filled the room, wet fur, blood, and rust. And when I opened the door, there was nothing, except 2 long claw marks inside the frame, and a single word etched into the wood: mine. One night something happened which I cannot forget. It was the summer of 2009. I was working the late shift at a logging site near the border of Minnesota and Canada. Remote area, dense woods, no nearby towns. My job was to maintain the night watch, walk the perimeter, keep an eye on equipment, and make sure no one was stealing fuel or copper from the machinery. Pretty easy gig, until it wasn't. It started with the radios. Every night, around 2 a.m., our walkie-talkies would pick up static, but it wasn't normal static. It pulsed, like breathing. Slow, rhythmic H bursts that felt too intentional. The first night, I thought it was interference. By the third night, I knew better. That night, I was walking the east perimeter when I noticed something strange. All the crickets had stopped. Total silence. Even the wind held its breath. Then I heard the footsteps, heavy, slow, bipedal, coming from the woods about 30 feet off the path. I turned my flashlight that way and saw something step between two trees. It wasn't a man, but it stood like one. 7, maybe 8 feet tall, with long limbs, hunched shoulders, and eyes that reflected red in my beam. The light caught its fur, dark, matted, bristled like a wet dog's, but its face, it was wrong, like someone had taken a wolf's skull and stretched it over something smarter, more deliberate. I froze. The thing stepped forward, slowly, silently. I raised my radio to call in, but all I got was the breathing static again. Heish, heish. Then, a voice came through. Not mine, not my supervisor's. It was a whisper, deep and distorted. Turn around. I didn't. I couldn't. But I felt something behind me, breathing on my neck. I swung around and saw nothing, just dark and trees. When I turned back, the thing was gone. But now, the woods weren't silent anymore. I heard growling, not close, but all around me. More than one. I ran. Didn't stop until I hit the sight trailer, locked the door, grabbed the emergency rifle from the cabinet and didn't blink until sunrise. When the rest of the crew arrived, I told them I'd seen something. They laughed, called it a bear or a moose, said the woods play tricks. But the foreman didn't laugh. He pulled me aside and said, "You're not the first. You won't be the last. Just don't follow it. If it talks, don't listen." I quit that job a week later, but it followed me. A month after I left, I woke up in the middle of the night. The room was ice cold. My bedroom window on the second floor was open, and something had left muddy claw prints on the hardwood floor, leading from the window to the edge of my bed and back out again. I live in a city now. No woods, no trails, no night shifts. But every once in a while, I hear that radio static in my head. Heish, heish. And I wonder if the Dogman ever really left, or if it's just waiting for me to stop looking over my shoulder. I was 19 when it happened to me, fresh out of high school, stuck in a dead-end job at a junkyard on the edge of the Appalachians. I was working nights, doing security. My boss called it patrolling, but really, it meant sitting in a rusted trailer for 8 hours, sipping cold coffee and scaring off the occasional copper thief. It was easy money, until one night, it wasn't. That night, the air felt wrong, heavy. It was late summer, but the wind was icy, dry, the kind of cold that makes your teeth ache. I stepped out for a smoke around 1 a.m., and the minute I lit it, I caught a smell. Musky, wet dog, but sharper, like copper and rot. Then I heard the dogs. We had 3 junkyard dogs, fat, lazy mutts that barked at squirrels like they were intruders. But that night, silent. Then came one long whining yelp, followed by silence, and then growling, low, deep, not from a dog. I walked the yard with my flashlight, heart racing. All I could hear was the crunch of gravel under my boots and the ticking of cooling engines. The junkyard was full of stacked cars, rusted shells, and shadowy corners. I checked the kennels first. They were empty. The cages were bent open, like someone had grabbed the bars and ripped. That's when I heard metal groaning, about 50 feet away, a hood slamming shut. Something was out there. I ducked between a row of old Cadillacs and froze. In the sliver of space between them, I saw it, tall, gaunt, its limbs too long, back hunched as it sniffed the air. Its skin, what little wasn't covered in patchy black fur, looked almost burned, like leather left too long in the sun. It had a snout, teeth like knives, but the eyes, they weren't animal, they were full of something else. Recognition. It saw me. I don't know how. It didn't look, but I knew it had. I turned and ran. Wrong move. It shrieked, this awful, high-pitched howl that sounded like metal being torn in half, and it chased me. I weaved between cars, but it was fast, too fast. I tripped over a muffler and hit the dirt hard, and just as it lunged, it stopped. A loud clang echoed through the yard. A spotlight had clicked on over the north lot. Motion sensor. The creature growled, hissed, then vanished into the dark like it had never been there. I didn't sleep that day. Didn't go back to work either. 2 days later, the owner called me, said they found the dogs, or what was left of them, bones, torn fur. Nothing else. He told me not to talk to anyone, that we don't bring attention to certain things out here. I asked what he meant. All he said was, you saw it. That's all that matters. It's been years. I live in a new city, far from junkyards and forests. But sometimes, I still hear the growling, especially when I walk past alleyways, or when the air suddenly turns cold in the middle of July. And once, I swear to God, I saw claw marks on the side of my car, 3 lines deep. Rust never formed around them, and no one else could see them but me. One evening I was dizzy, not from sickness, but from fear. I had just finished hiking a ridge in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, about 2 miles past where any trail should have ended. I'd been chasing the sunset like an idiot, hoping for a good photo, something to post online, and prove to myself the solo trip had been worth it. But something felt off. The trees were too still. Even the air tasted stale, like the inside of a cave. I told myself it was nothing, just fatigue, altitude. Then I found the tracks. They weren't bear prints. I've hunted, I've tracked. I know what a bear leaves. Behind these were different. Too wide in the front, almost hand-like, and too narrow at the heel. But they were deep, heavy. There were only 2 sets, left, right, something, walking upright. I squatted to take a photo of the prints when I heard branches snap up ahead. Slow, heavy crunches. I held my breath. More silence, then the growl, low, wet, guttural. It wasn't the sound of a warning. It was a statement. You don't belong here. I backed away from the tracks, nearly slipped down the ridge. That's when I saw it, between 2 old birch trees, tall, hunched, the shape of a man, but wrong. Its back curved like a dog, mid-pounce, and its face, half in shadow, stretched into a long, wet muzzle. Its eyes weren't glowing. That's what I remember most. No Hollywood shine, just black, like the wood swallowed the light right out. Of them it didn't lunge, it waited. I ran. I didn't think about how far I was from my car. I didn't think about the camera bag slamming against my hip. I just ran, but it didn't stay behind. Every time I stopped to catch breath, I heard it, just behind the trees, pacing me, letting me know it could catch me any time it wanted. But it didn't. That was worse. I made it back to my car just after midnight. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the keys twice. The forest behind me stayed dark, silent, but I felt it watching as I drove away. I saw something in my mirror, just for a second, long enough to make me gag on my own breath. It stood in the middle of the road, not chasing, not hiding, just watching. A week later, I woke up to scratches on my apartment window. I live on the 3rd floor. No fire escape, no air balcony, just for parallel claw marks in the glass. and in the middle, smeared across the pane like oil, was a nose print, like something had been sniffing at me. That was 2 years ago. I moved, changed numbers, changed jobs. But some nights, when the sky is clear and too quiet, I catch that same scent, wet fur and old blood. And I remember, it didn't have to. Let me go, it chose to. And one day it might change its mind. When I was young, I didn't believe in monsters. I was 12 when my dad moved us to a cabin in rural Kentucky after the divorce. He said the quiet would be good for both of us. No more sirens at night, no more angry neighbors, no more TV, just fresh air and firewood. The first few weeks were all right. I chopped wood, did homeschool worksheets, and helped him fix up the place. But there was one rule he made very clear, over and over again. Never go into the woods after dark, not even a few steps. I thought, it was just a dad thing, some weird way to scare me into behaving. But then came the night I broke the rule. It was a full moon, and I couldn't sleep. The cabin was hot, and the old fan did nothing but hum and rattle. I figured a little cool air from the porch wouldn't hurt. I stepped out barefoot, just to the edge of the stairs. The woods looked different at night, still, but like something was waiting behind every tree. Then I heard it, a soft tapping, like claws on bark. I told myself it was a raccoon, but the tapping got closer, not from the trees, from under the porch. I knelt down slowly and looked through. The slats. Two yellow eyes blinked back at me. Then I heard a voice, low, scratchy, but not from a person. You dropped something. My heart nearly stopped. I didn't drop anything. I ran back inside, slammed the door, and locked it. I told Dad everything. He didn't yell. He didn't say I told you so. He just stood there, pale, and said, get in the basement, now. We stayed down there all night. No lights, no talking. Around 3 a.m., something started walking on the roof, heavy footsteps, pacing, scratching. Then a sound like sniffing, deep and slow through the chimney flue. We stayed still, just before dawn. It stopped. Dad finally said something then. It's testing us. They all do. He didn't explain. The next morning I found claw marks on the porch and on my window. 3 long scratches and a greasy smear, like something had leaned against the glass. That day, Dad nailed crosses above every door and window, hung bags of hair and salt in the trees. He called them wards. Said they wouldn't stop it, just confuse it. Maybe slow it down. I begged him to leave. He said we couldn't. It chose us now. A week later, Dad went out to chop wood. He never came back. I found the axe stuck in a tree. No blood, no sign of him. But the ground around the tree was torn up, like something massive had circled it over and over and over. I stayed inside for 3 days straight. Then I ran. Now I live with my aunt in Ohio. She thinks I made it all up, but I still hear it sometimes, in dreams, in the wind, sometimes in the dead middle of the night. I wake up and smell pine needles and wet fur. And once, only once, I saw something on the roof across the street. It was crouched low, watching me, eyes glowing faint yellow, just waiting. One night something happened which I cannot forget. I was camping alone near land between the lakes, Kentucky. I know, that place has stories, especially about Dogman, but I'm not superstitious. I'd heard the legends, sure, but I chalked it up to drunk fishermen and internet nonsense. Still, there was something off about that night. It started with the silence, not the peaceful kind, the empty kind. No crickets, no frogs, not even wind, That silence made my skin crawl, like something was holding its breath with me. I was roasting a hot dog over my fire, trying to shake off the unease, when I noticed something out in the trees. Not movement, stillness. A shape too dark for shadow. It stood between two pines, far enough away I couldn't make out features, but close enough I knew it wasn't human. It was too tall, too hunched. I shined my flashlight. It vanished. Not like it ran, like it blinked out of existence. I packed up to sleep, locking myself in my little tent. But I barely shut my eyes before the noises started sniffing, right outside the nylon wall. Slow, deliberate breathing, like something trying to smell me through the fabric. I held still, praying it would go away. Then a claw, no mistaking it, dragged down the side of the tent, not slicing it open, just marking me. I didn't sleep. At first light, I burst out and scanned the area. No tracks. No signs of anything, except the side of my tent, where 4 deep slashes had torn the rainfly clean. I packed up and hiked out in record time. I didn't even stop to eat. The weirdest part, when I got back to the ranger station, the guy behind the desk wouldn't take my report. He looked over my shoulder, then said, "That's not something we document. You should go." 2 weeks later, I woke up to a package on my porch. No return address. Inside, a shredded piece of canvas. It was part of my tent, but I had thrown it away, and scrawled across it in thick smeared mud was one word: remember. Now I keep my lights on at night. I moved apartments 3 times in the past year, but every now and then, I still hear sniffing just outside my window. Sometimes, if I look fast enough, I catch the shadow tall, hunched, waiting. I was 27 when it happened to me. I had just moved into a rental cabin in northern Minnesota, way out near the border, thinking I'd spend the winter off-grid, writing a novel I'd always talked about. No neighbors, no distractions, just snow, pine trees, and silence. The first few weeks were peaceful. I'd wake up early, light the fire, drink coffee with frost on the windows. Every night, I'd listen to the wind outside as I rode by. Lanternlight. But that peace didn't last. It started with the knocking. 3 slow knocks on the back wall, not the door, the wall. Just above where my bed sat, I checked outside with the flashlight, thinking maybe ice had fallen from the eaves, but nothing was there. No tracks, no snow disturbed, just silence. The next night, it happened again. 3 knocks. Always at the same time. 2:33 a.m. The third night, I waited with a shotgun in my lap, heart pounding. I stayed up until almost 3, and just when I started to think, I'd imagined the whole thing. Knock, knock, knock. But this time, it was closer. It came from under the window. I pulled the curtain back, and for a split second, less than a breath, I saw a shape too tall. Its eyes met mine, barely a few feet away, and they weren't just glowing. They were aware, like it had been waiting for me to look. I fired through the glass. The flash blinded me, and by the time I got the door open and stepped out into the cold, it was gone. But there were tracks. Deep, perfect imprints in the snow, far too large to be human, and shaped like a cross between a wolf paw and a hand. The claws had dug so deep, they'd frozen into the ground. I followed them until they simply stopped, as if whatever it was had leaped into the sky, or disappeared. The next day, I boarded the windows. I moved my bed to the center of the room, away from the walls. I kept the fire going 24/7 and never let myself sleep more than an hour at a time. But it came back. Not knocking this time, whining this awful, low sound, like a dog in pain. But it didn't sound real. It sounded performed, like something pretending to be hurt, trying to draw me out. I didn't move. I just waited. Then came the scratching. Long, slow claws across the roof. After 5 nights of this, I cracked. I packed a single bag and hiked the 5 miles out to the road in the dark. When I got to the nearest town, I tried to explain what had happened. The sheriff just nodded and said, "Should have warned you. It picks someone new every winter." I asked him what it was. He didn't answer, just offered to drive me to the bus stop. Now, I live in a city with streetlights and sirens and way too many people. I don't mind the noise anymore, but I still wake up at 2:33 a.m., heart pounding, waiting for those 3 knocks. Sometimes I think I hear them, but when I check the walls, nothing's there, not yet. One evening I was dizzy, not from alcohol or illness, but from the weight of what I had just seen. I'd been hunting alone in the dense forests of Wisconsin, something I'd done countless times before. But that night was different. I was following fresh deer tracks in the fading light when I heard a deep growl. Not a bear's, not a wolf's, but something darker, more guttural. I froze, heart hammering, eyes scanning the thick underbrush. Out of the shadows stepped a creature I couldn't believe was real. Its body was massive and muscular, covered in thick, matted fur, but the posture, upright like a man, the face elongated, like a wolf's, with sharp teeth gleaming in the twilight. Its eyes locked onto mine, intelligent, cold, and ancient. I dropped my rifle, backing away slowly, but it didn't chase. Instead, it watched me retreat with a strange curiosity, like I was a puzzle to solve. Then it turned and vanished silently into the woods. I spent the night wide awake, flashlight in hand, but it never returned. Days later, I found large footprints near my campsite, half human, half canine. No one believed me when I told them. They called it a bear, or said I was hallucinating. But I know what I saw, and I know I'm lucky to be alive. When I was 16, I thought I was just imagining things. I grew up near a small town in Michigan, surrounded by endless forests. My friends and I loved to explore, especially at dusk, when the woods seemed to come alive. But there was one place we were warned never to go after dark, a clearing deep in the woods, rumored to be haunted. One summer evening, I decided to sneak out and check it out for myself. I wanted proof. Something real. Something to prove the stories wrong. I got there just as the sun dipped below the horizon. The clearing was eerily silent. Too silent. Then I heard it, a low guttural howl that didn't sound quite like any animal I'd ever heard. From the tree line, I saw it. A creature taller than any man, covered in coarse black fur, with eyes that burned amber in the fading light. It didn't move like a wolf or a bear. It walked on 2 legs, its posture rigid yet fluid. It watched me, unblinking. I froze. Suddenly, it let out a terrifying growl and charged. I turned and ran, branches whipping my face, heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I tripped and fell, scraping my knees. When I looked back, it was gone. I didn't sleep that night, and when I told my friends, they just laughed. But I knew what I saw was real. Years later, I still wake up sweating, hearing distant howls in the night, wondering if it's still out there, waiting. I was 29 when it happened. I'd been working a remote forestry job in northern Wisconsin for months, alone most of the time. My only company the endless trees and the occasional deer. I liked it. Quiet, predictable, safe. Or so I thought. One night, I was driving back to camp after checking some traps. The moon was full, the road slick with mud. That's when I saw it, a massive figure standing in the middle of the road, silhouetted against the headlights. At first I thought it was a bear, but the posture was wrong. Upright, like a man. Its eyes caught the light, glowing yellow, unblinking. I slammed the brakes, heart racing. The creature didn't move. It just stared. Then it stepped aside, but not without letting out a low growl. That shook me to my core. I parked the truck and sat shaking for a long time before I dared get out. The tracks in the mud were unlike anything I'd seen. Huge paw prints with elongated fingers and claws. I knew then it wasn't just a story. That night, I barely slept. Since then, I've seen signs, strange howls in the distance, eyes watching from the trees, and claw marks on the cabin door. The Dogman wasn't just a myth. It was real. And it knew I knew. When I was 12, my parents sent me to live with my grandfather for the summer. They said it was to get me away from the city, but even at that age, I knew they needed space. Mom was between jobs, Dad was drinking again. I wasn't dumb. Grandpa's place was an old farm tucked deep into rural Kentucky. No neighbors for miles. A rusted pickup, a faded barn, and fields that went on forever. There was a hollow out back, thick woods that dropped off into a ravine. The kind of place locals called bad ground. I didn't know that then. All I knew was it smelled like damp leaves and diesel, and that Grandpa always locked the barn from the outside. Grandpa wasn't much of a talker. Mosley grunted his way through the day, smoked Marlboros, and spoke only when absolutely necessary. But he had rules. Don't go past the tree line after dark. Don't talk to anything that talks first. And for the love of God, don't go near the barn after sunset. I broke all three, but not at once. It started with the dogs. Grandpa had two, Boone and Charlie. Big old bloodhounds with sagging skin and haunted eyes. They never barked, not even when strangers pulled up. They just watched. One night, about a week after I arrived, I woke up to the sound of them whining. Low and sharp. I looked out the window. They were facing the barn, not growling, not wagging, just staring. I went to tell Grandpa, but he was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table in his underwear, shotgun in his lap. Stay away from the windows, he said. It's hungry tonight. I didn't sleep. A few days later, I started exploring the edge of the hollow. Grandpa let me roam during the day, and I'd often walk to the far fence where the trees thickened. There was a narrow trail that dipped down, disappearing into the dark. Even in full sunlight, that path gave me chills. Then one afternoon, I saw something at the tree line, just for a second. A shape, too tall for a man, too thin for a bear. It was watching me. I froze, blinked. It was gone. When I told Grandpa, he took a long drag off his cigarette, exhaled through his nose, and said, "They come through sometimes. Just don't give 'em a reason." I didn't know what that meant. But that night, the dogs scratched at the back door until their paws bled. 2 weeks in, I heard it speak. I was in bed, barely drifting off, when a voice called from the field outside my window. "Buddy, hey, buddy, you left your ball out here." It was my dad's voice, but he wasn't in Kentucky. I sat up, heart pounding. "Come get your ball, kiddo," it said again, closer this time. "Don't be scared." Then came the scratching dot, not on the window, underneath it, like claws on wood. Searching for a way in, I turned on the lamp. Silence. I didn't sleep again that night. EITHER. I finally broke the biggest rule. In early July, it had been storming hard for hours. Lightning, wind, everything. The dogs were howling in the crawl space under the house, and Grandpa was gone. Into town for supplies. I heard something crash behind the barn, like metal hitting concrete. Then, Boone started barking. I grabbed a flashlight and ran outside before I could think better of it. Rain lashed my face. The beam from the flashlight was weak, flickering. I turned the corner and saw the barn door swinging. Open. Unlocked. Boone was nowhere. I called for him. Something called back, but it wasn't a bark. It was a low, wet growl, like something trying to sound like a dog, and failing. The flashlight flickered again. I stepped closer. There was something just inside the barn, squatting, breathing. I could hear its chest rise and fall. Could see the shine of its eyes in the dark. Not animal eyes. Not fully. Then it stood and ducked under the beam. 7 feet tall, if not more. Long snout, twisted. Tufts of matted fur. Arms too long. Legs like a dog, but wrong, and teeth. So many. They didn't fit in its mouth. Then it grinned. "Buddy," it whispered. In my dad's voice I ran. I don't remember getting back inside. I just remember slamming the door and hearing the thing hit it a moment later. It scratched, clawed, pounded. The dogs were dead quiet. Then a voice came through the door. Not my dad this time. Me. "Let me in, please. It's me. I'm scared." Over and over, until morning. Grandpa didn't yell. He just nodded when I told him. Then, he took me out back, lit a cigarette, and said, "We feed it a goat every fall. Keeps it from roaming. But it's hungry this year." I stared at him. "You knew it was out there?" He shrugged. "Been in this hollow longer than we have. Maybe longer than anything." I asked what it was. He said nothing. Just stared at the barn. Then he said, almost like a prayer, "It walks like a man, but don't ever mistake it for one." I left 2 days later. Parents came to pick me up. I never went back. Grandpa died the following spring. I didn't go to the funeral. I did get a letter, though handwritten, mailed before he passed. If you ever hear your own voice in the woods, don't answer. And if the dogs stop barking, don't run. Just shut your eyes. It likes fear, best of all. Sometimes I dream about the barn, the creaking wood, the thing with my face. And sometimes, when I'm out walking alone, I hear something in the trees behind me, too quiet for a coyote, too fast for a man. And I remember what Grandpa said. It walks like a man, but it isn't. I was 13 when it happened to me. Old enough to know what fear was, but too young to understand how deeply it could root itself in your body. How it could change the shape of your life forever. We lived on a small farm in rural Michigan, not the picturesque kind with painted barns and golden cornfields, but the rougher sort. Overgrown, underfunded, and half forgotten. My father had inherited it from his father, who'd lost most of it to debts and drink. All that was left was the main house, an old chicken coop, a collapsing barn, and maybe 10 acres of land surrounded by woods. So thick they swallowed sound, and they hid things. Things that shouldn't have been able to walk on 2 legs. The first time I heard it, I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the familiar creaks of the old farmhouse settling into the cold. Then came something else, crunched like leaves. Then again, closer. I thought maybe it was the neighbor's dog, an old German shepherd that sometimes wandered over. I looked out the window, but I couldn't see much in the dark. Just the faint outline of the chicken coop, about 20 yards away. Then I heard a sound that didn't fit. Scraping, metal on wood. Slow, deliberate. The coop door. I crept downstairs. Barefoot, careful not to wake my father, who would have whipped me for being up at that hour. Outside, the porch boards groaned under my weight. The air was cold enough to bite, and I remember the sky being so clear, you could see every star. That's how I noticed the chickens were silent. They're never silent, not unless something's wrong. I inched closer to the coop, flashlight trembling in my hand. Then I saw it, not clearly, just a shadow. It was crouched over, back turned to me, but even hunched it stood taller than a man. Its shoulders were broad, and I could see the faint shimmer of matted fur under the moonlight. Its legs were bent backward like a dog's hindquarters, but it had arms, long, sinewy, ending in something like hands. One hand was clutching a chicken. The chicken wasn't moving. I gasped. That was enough. It turned its head, not all the way, just enough for one glowing eye to catch the light from my flashlight, and it grinned. Not in a human way. This was a snarl with teeth too large and lips too thin to cover them. Then it stood up, 7, maybe 8 feet tall, shoulders hunched, long limbs swaying, and it took a single step toward me. I ran. The silence that followed. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't tell my dad either. I tried once, the next morning, but he laughed it off. Big dogs in the woods, boy. That's all. Maybe a coyote. But the coop door was torn off the hinges. The latch was shredded like it had been worked loose by claws instead of pried by hands. 3 chickens were missing. The rest refused to come out of the corner for days. My father boarded it up and muttered something about wild animals. But that night, I heard it again. This time, it was closer, walking in circles around the house. I kept the lights off. Just sat in my room, listening to the way the leaves crunched beneath something heavy and determined. Something that walked like a man, but moved like it had never truly been one. The disappearance of Wally Marsh 3 days later. Our neighbor disappeared. Wally Marsh lived about a mile up the road. Mid-50s. Friendly enough, but he liked his solitude. Drove into town once a week for groceries, and kept mostly to himself. His truck was found in his driveway. Door open. Keys in the ignition. His house was a mess. Signs of a struggle. His back door was torn right off the hinges, and drag marks led from the kitchen to the back porch. Then out into the woods. No footprints, just the drag marks and deep. 3, clawed. Impressions scattered every few yards, like something walked, dropped him, dragged him, then walked again. The sheriff said maybe it was a bear, maybe a home invasion gone wrong, but they didn't find blood, didn't find anything, really, and nobody mentioned the smell that lingered near his house, like wet fur and meat left in the sun. The night it tried the door, the worst night of my life, wasn't the first time I saw it. It was the night it wanted in. I was alone. Dad had gone into town, planning to stay with friends overnight, while he dealt with some farm equipment issue. I told him I'd be fine. The power went out around midnight. I lit a few candles and curled up on the couch, trying to ignore the way. The wind howled through the eaves. Then I heard the knocking not on the door, on the walls, the side of the house, then the back, then the front again. Slow, like it was walking in circles, testing every wall, every corner. Then came the scratching, like claws, dragging along the wood. And then, a voice buoy. It said it just like that, drawn out, mocking like. It had learned the word, but didn't know how to shape it. Come out, buoy, come out and play. It laughed after that. A dry, choking laugh that sounded like a dog trying to speak through broken teeth. I grabbed my dad's shotgun and sat in the hallway, shaking. The doorknob rattled. Then I saw its shadow move past the living room window, huge, slouched with ears, like a wolf in a snout that brushed the glass. I aimed the gun but didn't fire, because I knew it wasn't here to break in. It was here to see if I would invite it. The aftermath. When my father came back, I told him everything. He didn't laugh this time. He sat down and poured himself a drink. You remember your Uncle Len? He asked. I nodded. Uncle Len had disappeared years ago. Everyone said he'd run off. He didn't leave. He went into the woods one night with his rifle and never came back. I found his boot 2 miles deep, wedged between two trees like something had thrown it there. He paused. There are things in these woods, son. Always have been. You don't go out at night. You don't answer voices. And you never look them in the eyes. I left that place as soon as I could. Moved to the city. Married. Had kids. But every once in a while, I'll hear a story. Someone goes missing. Something seen on a trail camera. A scream in the woods no one can explain. Sometimes, I dream about the porch, and the eyes staring in through the glass, waiting, and I know it's still there, because you don't survive something like that and come away untouched. Part of me never left that farmhouse, and part of it never stopped following me. One night something happened which I cannot forget. I was 21 and working as a seasonal park ranger in northern Michigan, up near the Ottawa National Forest. It was supposed to be temporary, just a summer gig before I started welding school. That fall, I thought it would be peaceful. Simple trail patrol, some wildlife monitoring, helping tourists with directions. It was peaceful, at first. For about a week, then the local reports started rolling in. Missing pets, gutted deer, strange prints, howls that didn't match anything in the ranger guidebooks. And that's when I started hearing about McCullough Ridge. No one said the name casually. When they did, it was usually under their breath, or as a punchline to a conversation that wasn't really funny. The ridge was steep, covered in dense pine and birch, with almost no foot traffic. It wasn't even marked on the visitor maps. My supervisor, Glenn, gave the official reason as unstable ground and poor footing. Unofficially, he told me not to go near it. Let the locals whisper, and let the forest keep its secrets, he said once, over coffee. That part of the park don't belong to us. I should have listened. The night I went up there started normal. We'd gotten a call about campers hearing screams like a baby being killed near campsite 7B. That wasn't unusual. Bobcats, foxes, even elk can make some god-awful sounds. But Glenn wasn't around that night, and the other ranger on duty had food poisoning. So I took the call. The GPS coordinates were wrong. They led me past the marked campsites, and halfway up a barely visible trail on the east side of the ridge. The higher I climbed, the quieter the forest became. No bugs, no birds, just wind, and the feeling I wasn't alone. I found the tent torn to shreds. Poles snapped like twigs. No blood, but deep gouges in the dirt, like something had dragged the occupants away. I called for backup, but the radio crackled with static. I tried my phone, dead, even though it had 3 bars earlier. I should have turned around. I should have left. Instead, I followed the tracks. They were deep, precise, like canine prints, but massive, bigger than a bear, with claw marks that pierced the ground. I followed them up the ridge, and that's when I heard the voice. Help. A whisper too soft, too clear. It came from the trees, just off the trail. Please, help me. A woman's voice, broken, scared. I took a step off the trail, called out, "Hello, I'm hurt. I'm over here." Then silence. Then something snapped a branch directly behind me. I spun around, flashlight sweeping trees, rocks, nothing. Then I saw it. It wasn't in front of me, or even behind. It was above, perched in the crook of a pine, maybe 20 feet up, crouched like a spider. It was huge, covered in black-gray fur that looked wet. Its limbs were long, too long. One arm gripped the trunk while the other dangled, claws twitching. Its head turned sideways, slowly, like it didn't need to, like it just wanted to. Then it dropped to the ground, silent, and it stood. It looked like a wolf, but taller than me, broad shoulders, eyes too far apart. Its mouth hung open just a little, like it was smiling. Then it opened its mouth wider, unnaturally wide, and spoke. "Help me," same woman's voice, but the lips didn't move right, like it didn't know how. Then it charged. I ran. I don't remember hitting the trail again. I just remember the sound, not of footsteps, but of breath, right behind me. Heavy, steady, too calm for a chase, like it was toying with me. I tripped once, got back up with scraped palms. My flashlight hit a rock and went out. All I had was moonlight and pure panic. Eventually, I saw the trailhead, and the moment I crossed back over the ridgeline, it stopped. I turned, nothing, but the forest was loud. Again, crickets, birds, even a distant owl. Whatever it was, it wouldn't cross back into the park. I filed a report, told Glenn everything. He didn't blink. He just poured me whiskey and said, "McCullough Ridge has been bad since before we built roads. Folks go missing there every few years. Always the same story." I asked him why it mimicked voices. He just shook his head. "Some say it used to be a man. Some say it's something older. But it knows the shape of fear. It wears it like a mask." They found one of the missing campers 3 days later, naked, miles away, hiding in a drainage pipe. She wouldn't speak, just kept whispering. It wore my husband's face. It wore his face. They never found the others. I left the Ranger Service. 2 weeks later, moved back to Detroit. Took a job welding. I don't hike anymore. But sometimes, when I'm alone and things get real quiet, I hear that voice again, clear as day. "Help me." And I remember what I saw in the trees, and how it smiled with my voice. I was 15 when it happened to me. That summer was supposed to be a break, time away from school, the usual stress, and the awkwardness of being a teenager. My mom had sent me to stay with my cousin Tyler in Kentucky. His place was tucked away, near a stretch of land called Whitaker Creek, a name you won't find on any tourist brochure, and for good reason. It's out in the deep country, no streetlights. The closest thing to civilization was a gas station 20 minutes down a dirt road that looked like it hadn't seen a car since the 80s. The house sat just on the edge of dense forest, the kind where the trees leaned in too close for comfort. It always felt like something was watching you just past the tree line. You could feel it. The silence had weight. Tyler was 17, wild and half feral from growing up in the sticks. His parents were going through a rough divorce. That's why Mom thought it'd be good for both of us to spend some time together. "It'll help you bond," she said. Yeah. Bonding. We spent most days playing video games, riding around on Tyler's rusted out a TV, or shooting cans off logs with his pellet gun. It was bearable until the second night, when we got the warning. His neighbor, Mr. Carter, came over with his usual grim expression. A Vietnam vet, missing one eye, always smelled like chewing tobacco and old wood smoke. He never came around unless he had something serious to say. That evening, he leaned against the porch railing with a shotgun hanging from his shoulder and stared out toward the woods. "You boys stay out of them trees," he muttered. "Something lives down there in that creek bottom. I seen it once, thought it was the devil himself." Tyler snorted. "You mean that Dogman crap?" Carter didn't smile. His lips pressed into a line. "I mean something that walks like a man, smells like piss and wet dog, and screams like your mama when she's dying." Then he turned and left, limping back down the dirt path with his shotgun like it was a walking stick. I never saw him again after that. Tyler couldn't stop laughing after Mr. Carter left. "You believe that old coot?" he said, throwing a can of Mountain Dew into the grass. "Dude's half blind and probably eats possum jerky for breakfast." I didn't laugh. Something about Carter's voice stuck with me. The way he didn't blink, didn't smirk. It wasn't a ghost story he was telling. It was a memory. Later that night, Tyler started talking about making a video. I bet if we went out there and filmed something, even fake, we'd get hits online. Like millions of views. Imagine that, Whitaker Creek monster, caught on camera. I told him it was stupid, but he was already pulling out his old GoPro and charging it on the kitchen counter. "We'll just go look around," he said. "We won't go far, just to the creek and back." Tyler's mom was passed out on the couch. By 10. I don't know if it was wine or cheap whiskey that did it, but she didn't stir when we slipped out the back door with flashlights, a headlamp, and a dull pocket knife we found in the junk drawer. The trail to the creek wasn't even a real path, just flattened weeds and game trails used by deer or whatever else roamed the woods at night. The trees formed a thick canopy overhead, and the moonlight barely filtered through. We climbed over barbed wire fences, ducked under sagging branches, and pushed through thorn bushes until we finally reached the muddy edge of Whitaker Creek. It was almost midnight. Everything was too still. No bugs, no frogs, not even the breeze. That's when we saw the first tracks. In the mud, near the water's edge, huge paw prints, bigger than any dog I'd ever seen, bigger than a bear's. Each one was pressed deep into the earth, with claw marks at the end that curved slightly, like they weren't meant for digging, but for gripping. Tyler knelt beside one, his fingers tracing the edge. "No way this is coyote," he whispered. Then we heard the splash. Upstream, like something heavy had stepped into the water. Tyler froze, killed his headlamp. We ducked behind a boulder and waited. At first it was just a shape, a dark figure against the creek's silver surface. It was tall, at least 7 feet, built like a linebacker, broad through the chest and shoulders, but the arms, they hung too low, almost down to its knees. Then it moved into a patch of moonlight, and I swear to God, it looked right at us. Its head was all wrong, like a wolf, but stretched. The snout was long, the mouth slightly open, and I could see teeth. Too many of them. The fur was thick and patchy in places, soaked along its legs. But the eyes, those were the worst part. They weren't just reflecting light, they glowed, faintly, like embers, like they were lit from within. It sniffed the air and tilted its head. "That's when I knew it had found us," Tyler whispered. "Dude, run." And we did. We tore through the woods like we were being chased by a hurricane. Branches whipped our faces, briars snagged our shirts, and more than once I fell hard enough to knock the wind out of me. But we didn't stop. Not until we saw the porch light of the house. I remember collapsing on the floor inside, gasping, bleeding from my arms and legs, my lungs burning. Tyler slammed the door shut and bolted it. Neither of us spoke. We just sat in the laundry room with the lights off, holding dull kitchen knives, listening. We never saw the GoPro again. I don't even remember Tyler dropping it. Maybe it was yanked off him, or maybe something didn't want us to bring back evidence. At sunrise, I finally stepped outside, still shaking. The dew hadn't even burned off yet. That's when I saw them, the same tracks from the creek, right there in the backyard, leading up to the back door, then stopping. We didn't talk much that morning. Tyler stood on the porch, staring at those prints, like they were words in a language he almost understood but didn't want to translate. The edges were clean, no rain, no wind to disturb them, fresh, deep, whatever it was. It had come to the house and stopped right outside the back door. Tyler's mom didn't notice a thing. She was hungover, stomping around in slippers, yelling at us to clean up the kitchen or something like that. We didn't say a word to her. What could we say? Hey, a wolf man followed us home and sniffed the back door. She'd either slap us or laugh. After she went back to bed, Tyler whispered, "It found us." I nodded. We didn't go outside for the rest of the day. We kept all the windows shut, blinds drawn. The house didn't have air conditioning, just box fans, and the heat was unbearable. Still, neither of us dared open a window. By nightfall, the house felt like an oven. I laid on top of the sheets, soaked in sweat, barely able to breathe. Then, just after midnight, I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap at the window. I froze. My whole body locked up. I stared at the ceiling, refusing to move. Maybe it was a tree branch. Maybe it was a bird. Anything but that. Tap, tap, slower this time. Deliberate, like it was waiting for me to answer. My curiosity got the better of me. I rolled over slowly and pulled the curtain back. Just a sliver, it was there. Its snout was pressed to the glass, long-furred. Its nose fogged the pane. The eyes were inches from mine, those glowing amber pits, alive and calculating. It was smiling, not with joy. There was no warmth in it, just teeth. I didn't scream. I just dropped to the floor and curled into a ball under the bed, hands over my mouth. It stood there for maybe 5 minutes, maybe longer. I lost track of time. Eventually, the tapping stopped, but the smell lingered. Rot, wet fur, and something else. Something sharp and metallic, like blood in your mouth after you bite your tongue. The next morning, I asked Tyler if he'd heard anything. He didn't answer. He was already packing a backpack. "I'm leaving," he said. "You can't," I told him. "We don't have a car. I'll walk." "To where?" He zipped a bag. "Anywhere." But we didn't leave. Not that day, or the next. And each night, it got worse. The third night, we heard heavy footsteps on the porch. Not animal, not padded. These were footsteps, slow, methodical, like something upright was pacing back and forth in front of the door. Then the doorknob rattled. Tyler and I sat in the hallway, knives clutched so tight our hands cramped. The whole house seemed to hold its breath. We waited for it to kick the door in. It didn't. It just left. Scratches showed up on the siding the next morning, for long gouges, like a rake dragged across the wood. Too high up for a dog, too wide for any tool we owned. Tyler stopped sleeping, just sat in the living room each night with every light on, eyes bloodshot, whispering to himself. I asked him what he was saying. "I'm just apologizing," he muttered, "just in case it listens." On the 5th night, I woke up to silence, not just quiet silence. The kind where your ears strain to find anything. No crickets, no wind, no creaking from the walls. And Tyler's bed was empty, the covers tossed aside. The window cracked open, the back door was swinging wide. I ran outside barefoot, heart jackhammering in my chest. The yard was empty. I screamed his name until my throat burned. No answer, just the forest. Still watching, they found Tyler. 2 days later, a hunter came across him in an old deer blind miles away. He was naked, shivering, covered in scratches and bite marks, dried blood on his face. His nails were torn, like he'd tried to claw his way out of something. He didn't speak. Not at first, just curled into a ball and rocked back and forth whenever someone mentioned the woods. They checked him into a psychiatric facility in Lexington. His mom didn't fight it. I think part of her was relieved to hand the responsibility off to someone else. I visited him once before I left. He wouldn't look at me, just stared at the wall. But when I stood up to leave, he said something very quietly. "Did you tell it?" "Thank you." I didn't know what to say. I just walked out. I left Kentucky 2 days later. Didn't say goodbye to Tyler's mom. Didn't pack right. I stuffed clothes in a duffel bag and rode a Greyhound back home, with dirt still under my fingernails and scratches on my arms that hadn't scabbed over. I didn't sleep on the bus, that every time my eyes drifted shut, I saw it, that face, those teeth, those eyes lit from within, like lanterns in the dark. It wasn't just fear that kept me awake. It was this cold certainty in my chest that I hadn't escaped anything. I was just changing the setting, moving the chessboard, but the player, the thing, it was still in the game. Back home, things were off. I couldn't explain it at first. Nothing looked different. My bedroom was just how I'd left it. The neighborhood was quiet, normal, boring. But I never felt alone. Every night, I'd catch glimpses of shadows that shouldn't be there. Behind trees, between cars, just outside the circle of porch-light dot. My mom said I looked thin, pale, said I jumped at every sound. She blamed it on teenage stress. I didn't argue. What could I say? Asterisk something not quite a man and not quite a beast followed me home from Kentucky and watches me breathe while I sleep. No, I tried to ignore it. I really did. I focused on school, took therapy sessions over. Zoom told myself I was traumatized, not haunted. But then the tapping started again. Tap, 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 at the window, always. Around 3 a.m. first I thought it was in my head. I'd look, nothing there then. One night, I left my phone on video mode and pointed it at the window before I went to sleep. Next morning, I watched the footage. At 3:12 a.m., the curtains shifted slightly. At 3:14, the tapping started, and at 3:15, something passed by the window, fast. Just a blur, but tall, upright, covered in fur. And then, just as the video ended, I caught a frame. A single clear shot. One glowing eye peering in through the gap in the curtain. I deleted the video. I don't know why. Maybe because some part of me believed it was safer not to have proof. Like it wanted me to see it, and showing someone else would be breaking the rules. It didn't stop there. I'd find long gray hairs in the hallway, even though we didn't own pets. My closet door started creaking open on its own. The smell would come back. Piss, wet dog, rot dot, and the dreams. God, the dreams. I'd be walking through the woods, barefoot, with something chasing me. Always just behind. I'd trip, fall, and look up, and it would be there, towering over me, smiling, but never killing, just watching, like it enjoyed the fear, like it fed on it. One night I got so desperate I called Tyler's number, straight to voicemail. I left a message, something like, "I think it's here. I think it came back with me." I didn't expect a response, but the next night, my phone buzzed at 3:17 a.m. One text. It doesn't leave. It chooses. I dropped the phone. Didn't sleep that night. Didn't sleep much after that, either. I tried moving rooms. Didn't help. I tried sleeping in the living room with the TV on. Didn't help. I even tried leaving the lights on outside to scare it off. That only seemed to encourage it. One night, I heard it walking around the backyard, pacing, grunting, breathing. I turned every light on in the house. Still it came. Tap, tap, tap. I finally broke down and told my mom. She didn't believe me, of course, but she knew something was wrong. She said my eyes were sunken. My hands trembled. I was flinching at shadows. She booked me a counseling appointment the next morning. I didn't make it to that appointment, because that night, I saw it fully. Not through a curtain. Not in a blur of movement. I was brushing my teeth. Just a normal night. Trying to pretend life was fine. And then I looked up and there it was. Standing behind me in the mirror. Not in the room. Not visible with my eyes. Only in the reflection it was crouched behind me. Shoulders heaving. Breath steaming. Smiling. I spun around. Nothing. Turned back to the mirror. Gone. Gone. I collapsed to the floor and just cried. Like Tyler had. Like we'd both been marked. The next day, I packed everything I could and left. Took what savings I had and moved. Across the country. Didn't tell anyone where I was going. New place. New life. Apartment in a city. Bright lights. Noise. Noise helps. It makes it harder to hear the tapping. Because sometimes, even here, it comes back just little things. Scratches on the fire escape. The scent of wet fur in the stairwell. Faint growling from the hallway when I'm trying to fall asleep. And once, God help me, I saw a man on the subway with glowing amber eyes. He smiled. So now I live like this. Head on a swivel. Lights always on. No mirrors in the house. I don't date, don't party, don't go into the woods, because I know now it wasn't just a creature. It was something old, something that chooses people, haunts them, feeds on them, not by killing them, but by breaking them. I think it likes us scared. It gets stronger when we're afraid, and I'm very, very afraid. If you hear tapping at your window at 3 a.m., don't look. If you smell rot and wet fur with no source, don't speak. And if you ever find yourself at Whitaker Creek, turn around, don't go near the water. And if you see glowing eyes, don't run. It wants you to run, because it already knows your name, and once it chooses you, it never lets go.